This time on the show, advanced flying techniques and your viewer questions. Today on Hak5.
Hello, welcome to Hak5. My name is Darren Kitchen.
My name is Shannon Morse.
It's your weekly dose of Technolust.
And we have been droning it up.
We have been, and you know what? We've got a really fun one today because we're getting out in the field. I'm sharing some more advanced flying techniques.
Yeah.
Things that will help you build on our segment from not last week, the week before, when we were talking about very beginning learning to fly. And now we're going to take it the next step further, take it outside and start doing some loops and start getting really comfortable with the craft, even when the back of it isn't facing you.
I feel like I'm still kind of a noob when it comes to these advanced flying techniques, so I'm just going to let you show everybody how to do them so I can learn from you and then practice on my own.
Hours and hours and hours of practice.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. So probably best that you just get a toy and just crash it a bunch.
So we're going to go out into the field. The audio might be a little bit tricky while we're out there, you know, if people walk by and they're talking or something like that. So just stay with us throughout the segment, and we hope you enjoy it.
Yeah. All right, so everything that we did in studio last week and learning to fly, kind of the very basics, was keeping the back of the model towards us. And the reason for that is because when you say go left, it goes to your left and right is your right. The thing about that is, once you turn it around and it's facing towards you, left is now right and right is now left in your perspective. So it's kind of like the difference between absolute and relative paths in a directory structure. So what we're going to do today is we're actually using a different craft. This is a toy. This is a RC Logger I1S. It's like a beefed up version of a Hubsan or something. I like them just because of the way that they charge over a really cool little USB dongle, which means that you can recharge them off your laptop in the field. And we're going to burn a few batteries going over some techniques that we can learn today to get better at flying line of sight, even if the orientation of the craft isn't such that the back of it is towards us. And we're going to be doing some circle patterns, we're going to do some cyclones, some figure eights around the tree, to build on top of the skills that we've already learned walking the dog and things of that nature like we did last week. And so in talking about orientation, it's really important to keep a good visual identity of where the front of the craft is, the back of the craft. Thankfully, this one we have a very obvious front is the red and the back is the black. And so in doing so, what we're going to do here is we're going to take off like normal and we're going to gain some altitude. In all of the previous stuff, we had been around head level. We're actually going to be above head level, and the reason for that is I want to be able to look up and see it. It's one of those optical illusions where at certain points it can be confusing as to whether the craft is going towards you or away from you. So that's another thing, is we're just going to have to, in all of our maneuvers, kind of commit to that and just visualize as we are the craft. This, by the way, I don't want to say you can skip it if you're going to go straight to FPV flying with the video goggles, because you will be like that perspective. It's like you're Gordon Freeman, you know, it's like any other, you know, FPS shooter or something like that. However, this is a really good thing to learn, because in the event that an FPV system fails and you have to use visual line of sight to bring it back down, if it's pointed towards you, you don't want to totally screw it up by going left when you meant to go right and then bam, right into a tree. So let's get started. One of the nice things about using a toy like this RC Logger is that the controls are exactly the same as our other controllers. So our throttle's on the left, and we've got our pitch and our roll and our yaw, just as we are normally used to. So this translates 100% when we pick up our other quadcopter. So once you've got some altitude and you've got orientation on the craft, what you'll want to do to start creating that circle pattern is give it some forward momentum, pitch forward just a little bit, and you'll notice that if you yaw, you can spin, and while you can turn the craft around that way, it's actually not really the best way to turn, because you're really kind of like power sliding into it. And I mean, maybe drifting is your thing, but it's not going to give you the best kinds of turns. Really what you're going to want to do is use both your left hand. So in addition to giving it the throttle and that little bit of yaw to spin the craft, you'll also want to go ahead and roll into the turn. So you'll want to do both your rudder and your ailerons there, or yaw and roll simultaneously to one direction or the other, and just kind of get a feel for how much it takes to spin that craft, which is why it's important to have it, say, above you. And again, do this away from trees and other people, and you'll be fine. Spend a few batteries just getting comfortable with the way that the craft responds, doing both either just yawing it to turn and watching it power slide, or both roll and yaw. And once you're comfortable going and say clockwise, try it again counterclockwise. You'll notice that maybe your brain does it likes one way or another. I don't know. I don't watch NASCAR, but I'm just saying. All right, so once you're comfortable with those banking turns, and again, instead of power sliding around like that, giving it a little bit of roll in addition to your yaw, so you kind of come around like this, what you'll notice is that it's a very effective way to turn, but there may be instances where you want to turn even faster. And so while you can slow down to turn faster, if you want to keep your throttle up, one way to do that is to go ahead and actually throw some pitch into the mixture as well. So for a faster turn, as you're going into it with your little bit of yaw here, your little bit of roll there, go ahead and pitch up. What that pitching up does is, it kind of like, imagine a banked wall. Like, I guess I just mentioned NASCAR, but those banked walls there where you go ahead and pull back on the stick on your throttle, or I'm sorry, keep your throttle up but pull back on your pitch, and it'll bring it forward. You're gonna scrub some speed, but what'll happen is you'll come around like this. Some people call this banking and yanking. It works. If you're racing, this isn't necessarily the best maneuver for every particular turn, but it is one that will get you around, say, a tree much quicker. So as you're rolling around and you use that pitch to bring yourself around, just keep in mind as you level off to use your pitch to get it back to where it needs to be. So just like before, we're really going to want to spend a lot of time experimenting with this, burning as many batteries as we possibly can until we get comfortable. So in this case, very much so, you need to find an open field, somewhere clear of some trees, enough space so that you can get some altitude and comfortably make those turns, because when you do lose orientation, and you will when you're first starting out, just remember the colors of your craft so that you can just use your rudder to spin it back around to where you're comfortable with the back of it towards you, using the skills that we learned last week, and just bring that back in, and then just keep trying those circles. And then once you're done with those circles and you're confident, you know, making your clockwise and your counterclockwise circles, that's when it's a great time to go ahead and start burning more packs, trying different moves like an oval shape where you go across yourself, turn, and then across yourself again, and making those ovals. Another really fun one to just get a feel for the way the craft responds is to do, I call them cyclones, people call them different things, but you get into a real tight funnel turn where you start doing this, and it's really rewarding. It's a fun trick to do, and in addition to those, once you've got the hang of this stuff, start throwing in, you know, your figure eights. And of course, if you really want to get proficient, especially with those tighter turns, line of sight, in addition to just being, you know, up in the air, if you're going to especially be doing some FPV racing, say through the woods and the trees, where you'll want to have that kind of confidence if you do lose your video transmission to be able to get it around any sort of obstacles. And this is a great way to learn those tighter turns, is to just pick a tree. And so the trick to this is visualize that move before you even take off the ground. So you see the craft, you're gonna go towards the tree, you're gonna say make your left-hand turn, you're gonna have to actually use your pitch to go ahead and get that tighter turn around the tree. A lot of times, you know, you're really gonna wanna find a tree with very few low-hanging branches that will allow you to like not get caught in those, as you will inherently end up gaining altitude as you try to make those turns. And just go ahead and visualize that entire turn around the tree, because what's going to happen is, this is a really good exercise to understanding what happens when the orientation changes, and just spend a while just going around the tree. Just see it, go into it, and then commit to that turn. Whatever turn you choose, go ahead and commit to that and see how it comes around. And with each time you go around that tree, maybe change the turn depending on what you need to do. So if you need to tighten it up, bank more. If you need to, you know, if you were too tight, bank a little less, and see how that changes those turns, and then just keep doing that. That has been, for me at least, the #1 exercise that I could do to actually have it click in my mind when the craft is facing towards me, that left is right, or that left is right, yeah, and right is left, which is, like I said, like a lot of people use a computer simulator for this. That's a fantastic option to go with, but nothing beats the real thing. And you know, some people take to it like that, and then instantly they can visualize themselves as the craft, and it makes sense. Other people, like me, it took a little longer, but around the tree is a really good one. I want to take a quick moment to thank our awesome sponsors, Domain.com. If you've been watching Hak5 for a while, you know how much we love these guys. They are affordable, reliable, easy to use. It's where Shannon and I go whenever we need to take our awesome ideas and bring them to the web. They'll have your website up and online in no time. They've got a very simple domain discovery system that makes it easy with their checkout process too. Get this, you can save an extra 15%. So just use the coupon code HAK5 to save yourself 15% off. And you know what? Even if you're not looking for a domain name right now, you should still tweet them at Domain.com and say thanks for supporting Hak5 all these years. So when you think domain names, think Domain.com. It's kind of ironic. I think there was like an FA-18 that passed by.
That was awesome.
Which is kind of appropriate.
That was so perfect.
Yes. Actually, the other day, we were all, as we're talking about this, over the weekend, I was flying with the guys in town where we have kind of like a little underground FPV racing league.
Nice.
And it's a lot of fun. Yeah. We have this little place carved out. And police helicopter starts circling around, I guess looking for someone or something.
Whoa.
So of course we just land and
Yeah.
we're like, he's like 400 feet. No, not actually. He was like
you
really
don't
close to the
start
ground. He was
anything.
maybe like 200 feet to the ground. It was pretty low.
Close.
Yeah, he was like looking for something. What's crazy is he actually the police helicopter put on a siren.
What?
Which I didn't even know that they had sirens.
I
How is that
didn't
even
either.
Right, like what are you gonna do? Like pull over, like land or something? Like.
Well, I have always seen those signs on the side of the road that say like radar detected via aircraft, speed detected by aircraft.
Yeah. I love that. Speed enforced by aircraft. It's like, what are they gonna like come down and like bam, 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 bam.
It's like, what are they gonna do?
Nothing. I'm reminded of that. Was it From Russia with Love with James Bond? And then there's the helicopter with the giant magnet. It lifts up the car.
So.
I think it was From Russia with Love. Fantastic Bond movies.
So we have a bunch of Twitter questions because we tweeted out, I think the other week, or maybe it was 2 weeks ago, asking people what questions they had about building drones, if they have any questions about quads or drones in general. So I'm going to go ahead and pull them up. So the first one is from Nico Tedders on Twitter. He says, at Snubs, I was a bit surprised there was no mention, unless I missed it, on the very popular open source Tyrannus Plus. Otherwise, great work.
The Tyrannus is amazing, and so is
Tyrannosaurus Rex.
And so is the Turnigy 9X. Those are both different transmitters or controllers, and they're very popular. The Tyrannus will run this open source software called OpenTX. It's a really fantastic suite for your transmitter that adds tons of awesome functionality. So we love that kind of stuff. I have one. I cannot for the life of me find it in the warehouse right now.
Story of Darren's life, he can't find anything.
No, we had it before Pentest with Hak5. We cleaned up, it ended up in a box. I need to find it. Oh, I just remembered where it is now, as we were just discussing.
Of course.
Okay. But I use that because what's really cool is they have these little, what's called JR modules. JR is a manufacturer, and there's these modules. So the radio itself, I think it has like a 2.4 gig transmitter on it, but it has this modular bay where you can stick in different modules that have different frequencies. And so I use mine with a different radio system. So, so it's really cool because they're modular and it's open source.
Yeah.
It's quite large. We'll get into when we talk about the Devo 7e why I prefer that. But they're all great controllers, and so that's a really good one. I would say, like, if you're first starting to get into this, you might want to, if you're not sure, pick up something cheap like an Orange TX from Hobby King or something inexpensive to get your feet wet. Just get a 6-channel or higher, and you'll be good. But once that's done and you've decided, like, okay, this is the hobby for me, I want to continue with this, put some money in that controller because you're not going to be crashing it. Or actually, if you're crashing it, you're really doing it wrong.
And our next question comes from at Jake Obson on Twitter. He says, at Snubs, could you do more on the Devo 7e and how it was hacked?
Oh, okay. So that's appropriate. So the reason that I love the Devo 7e is this is my
Oh my gosh, that's perfect.
Thank you. This is my entire flight kit here.
That's awesome.
This is...
I love how small this is.
Thank you. That is
compact.
the other quadcopter that has, and actually here, let me switch over there so you can see this. Contains the quadcopter that we just built as well as the batteries in a little Pelican case. So as you can see, this guy is just perfect for that. I want to say this is a 1075 case. I don't know if they make them anymore, but it's a fantastic case. And similarly, I like to have something really compact for the field. So that's the #1 reason why I'm using the Devo 7e. Because, you know, as you can see inside this, I have my goggles. We'll get to that when we do FPV. And then the Devo 7e, which, yes, has been hacked. So first thing was to replace the antenna. So you'll have to do a little bit of soldering, open this guy up, and you'll find that you can just go ahead and put an SMA. Just like you would normally find on like Wi-Fi gear. And actually that's
Do you have to solder it onto the board inside of there?
Yes, you do. It will be very obvious where it goes.
Okay,
You cut the pigtail on a SMA extension, or RP SMA if you will, and you will solder the ground to 2 points, and then on the inside of the coax there's some insulation, and then there's the center of it, and that will solder to a different point.
Yeah,
it will be
easy.
very obvious where it goes. If you do that, what it means is you'll be able to have a user replaceable antenna.
Cool.
Since this is a 2.4 gigahertz transmitter, just like Wi-Fi.
Yep.
This I just pulled off
Which means you can use the same.
Oops. I just pulled this off of a Wi-Fi Pineapple.
Yeah.
That's
you
what
can
this
use
is
the
from.
same exact antennas.
Yes.
That's awesome.
While you're inside of the Devo 7E, there is a RF shield can that if you open, there is a certain diode that if you bridge the connection, it's a very small, it's like an 0402, it's super tiny, so you either desolder it and bridge it, or you use, there's some hacks to this, but that's like a whole segment in itself. We should do this. I have a second one of these.
I would love to, yeah.
We should do that mod. But when you bridge it, what you end up with is going from, I think, 1 milliwatt to 10 milliwatt.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a pretty significant increase.
Wow.
This is really a short-range, like toy transmitter. This is something that you get with a toy helicopter, but it has a lot more potential because when you unlock it by doing that mod, you'll get like a mid-range transmitter. Now, I want a full-range transmitter, like my Devos my Spectrum DX8. So that's why I have this SMA, and this isn't the prettiest. I'm actually going to loop back around and fix this up, so maybe this will make a good segment. But I'm tapping power off the back here, which comes out as a JST connector, and that goes to this module here. And so this module is just tied in with a little SMA extension, which is not the greatest way to do that, but it works. And this is just a very generic 2.4 gigahertz booster that I just Velcro onto the back, and then I just plug in its power. It takes 5 volts, so I'm just pulling that right off the board. Yeah, it's very ugly, but what it means is I'm taking that 10 milliwatts and then I'm further increasing it to the maximum legal limit in the United States.
The maximum legal limit. That's cool. Yeah, we'll definitely have to do a segment on that so you can actually see the insides and how we solder it.
Yes.
I would love to do some more
build.
soldering. I love soldering. And next on Twitter is from Bassett Mate, who says, @Snubs, which quadcopter has the most surviving battery life? So I clarified, he means off the shelf, a quad with battery.
So typically when we do these home builds, especially as we're going for really light and we're doing that 210 kind of size, and this is really what you would find, like this kind of a package is what you would find typically in the racing scene. I don't know how much I would like to race this one just because there's the carbon fiber props and it's so pretty. But anyway, this you're talking maybe 5 to 9 minutes in that ballpark.
Okay.
You're not going to get much more out of this.
Yeah.
And is at least not out of 250 grams. Isn't
it pretty similar with ones just off the shelf?
No, that's the thing is when it comes to these quadcopters in the racing arena, 5 minutes is your average.
Oh, okay.
When you get into aerial photography, then you're looking at much larger quadcopters that you either build out of kits, the S800 from DJI or things of that nature. In fact, DJI, when it comes to photography stuff, has like a lot of the, I don't know, I would say most mainstream, I don't know if I want to say best, but they have some of the most mainstream aerial platforms for videography. And they typically tout around 25 minutes.
Oh, wow.
Which is pretty fantastic.
Yeah,
so
that's huge.
That's what you're going to get typically out of things like an Iris or a Phantom from DJI, just to throw out some off-the-shelf stuff.
But of course, with that also comes the cost.
Yeah.
You're going to be spending over $500, sometimes close to $1,000 for those.
I think the Iris is like 3,000?
Yeah, the Iris is, but a lot of the ones that are off the shelf that you can get as a consumer, like ones that I've seen at CES, those are like $700, $800, some of the ones that I've seen. But yeah, like the newest DJI, the one that has 4K, I believe it is.
Yeah.
That
well,
one
that's
is
just
like
the camera system, but
a few grand. It's pretty expensive.
It's a time money trade-off.
Yeah.
And then it also, like, we're trying to build like a very generic platform here to kind of get you familiar with the different subsystems of it. Really, it scales up. I mean, we could do, if we did another segment on building an octocopter to have 20 minutes of flying time, it would be the exact same thing, and we would just gloss over most of the stuff because the ESC is the ESC, the motor is the motor, the prop's the prop.
All this stuff is the same. You can just change it in software.
Well, yeah, and it becomes a lot more expensive when you buy the bigger hardware. But so 25 minutes is your off-the-shelf kind of typical for non-racing quadcopters.
Okay.
Although, interestingly enough, right now we are starting to see the emergence of off-the-shelf racing quadcopters as this hobby has developed as kind of just like a tinkerer's sport, putting together, you know, the 250 class quadcopters. And like what we just built, and now you can go and buy a Vortex from Immersion RC, I believe.
That's awesome.
So there's a lot of like off-the-shelf opportunities there, but typically in racing, you're talking 5 to 10 minutes, and typically in aerial photography platforms, 25, but the price difference is vast. And then the size of them, I mean, it's like a full-on suitcase for the Iris.
They're huge.
Yes. Next.
Next up is at mattb.com, who says, at Snubs, S-Bus versus PPM for super small drones. Is it worth it?
Yeah, so we're using PPM. We're talking about the difference between the signaling with our receiver here.
Yeah.
And S-Bus is another popular choice. And I didn't think it was that big of a deal until over the weekend, one of our friends that swears by it was telling me that you should expect to get something like a 40 millisecond difference in your response time.
Wow.
So it's going to be much faster. I guess it's in the way that it encapsulates the packets, or it could be the refresh rate, but regardless, all of this is a very tight loop.
Yeah.
It's constantly the flight controller saying, what are my sensors telling me? The gyroscopes, the magnetometers, the accelerometers, all of those things.
Right, yeah.
Doing its math, and then saying, okay, now what is the human telling me what to do? And the only way it knows that is from what it got from the receiver. And then based on those two values, coming up with the ideal way to turn and what to change.
Okay.
So if you can increase the speed at which you can communicate with that flight controller using a better protocol like S-Bus versus PPM, then you can get a faster response time. And so 40 milliseconds is actually quite a bit, especially when you're doing things like cliff diving, which we may have been doing over the weekend, where you're like going down a cliff like this, and at the last minute you have to pull up.
Oh my gosh.
And and it, you know, you may think you've got it, but that could be the difference between, you know, pulling out and smashing into the ground, which is fun and expensive.
That would not be very nice. And ZooCod3 says, great series, really enjoying it. When will you be covering hooking it up to Skynet and attaching cameras and weaponry?
Well, we are going to do a bit on FPV.
Cool.
And we'll talk about some cameras and some transmitters and antenna theory and things of that nature, which is fun in its own right. We're going to start sprinkling in some other things right now, because we're
taking vacations in May.
We're both going on big trips, and so Hak5 is going to get interesting here real soon. But that notwithstanding, we are going to definitely focus on FPV. I'll talk about some cameras. Skynet and artillery-wise, currently the FAA is saying like no on the whole dropping things from quadcopters.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because, you know, it kind of it ruins the whole concept of like deploying like packages, you know, the whole like Amazon Prime idea that a drone would come by, hover over your house and drop a package. You can't do that right now. So there's some interesting things that are being done with like cables and like, you know, getting it on the ground and then letting go of the cable and pulling it back up. But no, currently no missiles. One could argue that with the appropriate GPS software, these really are just cruise missiles, but that's
what about
totally
hacker weaponry?
Like, you mean like intelligence systems, like doing a little bit of reconnaissance with Wi-Fi and stuff? Like, it'd be a really fun way to war drive, except drones, so we could get a much larger area. If we got high enough altitude and a sensitive enough panel antenna pointed straight down, I bet we could cover a big area. Yeah. That'd be a lot of fun. Huh.
Gee.
Yeah.
Yeah. I got good ideas.
Send us your good
start
ideas.
thinking.
Feedback at hak5.org.
And we have one last message from Twitter from @Blatadude. Nice name. What's a decent FPV kit that doesn't cost an arm and a leg?
All right, so we are going to cover FPV in more detail in an episode. However, I will throw out there that there are so many inexpensive FPV transmitters right now. It's hard to even mention a specific model just because there are so many.
Yeah.
Aomway, Foxeer, there are just dozens of these. And like in this entire build, we've been linking to more like mainstream and US distributors like Amazon and stuff like that. You will find all of these parts directly from places like Banggood and other retailers in China that will be much less expensive, and that seems to be the case, especially with the FPV gear. I use a 3-gram camera. I wish I could say a model number. That's kind of just what it's known as.
That's
the
awesome.
3-gram camera, as well as an Aomway transmitter. But I'm probably going to be trying a few different transmitters before we get into the whole FPV system. But really, you should be able to get away with less than 50 bucks.
Oh yeah.
You know, if you're spending like 15, 20 bucks on the camera and then 25, bucks on the transmitter, the only other thing to it is the antenna, and a lot of times those get thrown in for free.
Yeah.
So FPV can be done for very inexpensive. It really just depends on, and we'll go into this in the series, but it depends on what frequencies and stuff you're going to use. When you get to some of the more esoteric frequencies that require like ham licenses and such things get heavier and more expensive. But if you're just talking 5.8 gigahertz, which is the typical spectrum that we use that for FPV, then it can be very cheap. So I would say just look around your kind of, trying to think of some good retailers off the top of my head, but like they're all just direct from China kind of stuff.
What about Alibaba?
Yeah, that kind of stuff.
Okay, cool.
I'll throw some links in the show notes actually to some of my recommendations because I was just toying around with that. So
Awesome.
I'll toss that in.
Well, that was it for the viewer questions. We had a few other ones that we'll toss into future episodes.
Yes, keep them coming. Leave them in the comments.
Yeah,
Email
definitely.
feedback@hak5.org. Let us know your thoughts.
Yeah, since we haven't really done drone segments before, it's nice to know what you guys find interesting for all these, so definitely let us know. Feedback@Hak5, and you can also reach us on Twitter. It's @Hak5. Easy!
Yay! Also, you can go over to hak5.org. Check out the new website. It's where you can learn all about the ways that you can contact us on social media. You'll also find the RSVP links if you would like to join us at any of the future Hack Across the Planet meetups. Shannon, you're going to be
in Tokyo. So Tokyo, Japan, May 23rd. I'm having a meetup from 8 to 11 p.m. It's going to be at a place called Brewdog Roppongi. I already made the reservation. Unfortunately, the first place that I planned was going to try to charge me like a per person price,
really?
like a party menu. And I was
weird.
like, that's not going to work for a meetup.
Yeah.
So I switched venues, still in the Tokyo area. So it's pretty easy to get to. It's like right off one of the train stations.
I
so
hear the trains work
simple.
really well there.
Yeah, apparently.
And then I will be with Sebastian in Australia for
Awesome.
AusCert. I'm keynoting that conference as well as doing a workshop on the Wi-Fi Pineapple. So if you're in the Australia area, and I say that very generally speaking, I hear the Gold Coast is beautiful, and we would love to see you. So there will be
kind of a big country.
Details on the meetup. It's just a little island. I saw it on the globe. It was.
The toilets go backwards.
Thank you. And I can't mention that place without her saying that. As well as Sydney. We will do Sydney on June 4th.
You should bring home a koala.
Yeah, just one like hugging my
Hanging off
leg,
your
just
leg.
sorry, I can't. Just like.
They have pretty mean claws on them, though.
Yeah, I don't think the beagles will let me get by in the airport with those. But we'll see. We'll see. I might even try some Vegemite. This could be leading to some very awkward vlogs. Hak5.org is also where you'll find links to our websites and vlogs and all of that other good stuff. Thank you so much for your support. On that website, you'll also find our awesome products that we make and sell through our hack shop. So let us know what you think of the new site, and
that's it.
that's it.
Yeah, we're done.
Out of here.
You're done here.
All right. Until next time, I'm Darren Kitchen.
I'm Shannon Morse.
Trust your technolust.
Trust your technologist. You hear the dogs?
Are you trying to communicate with your home people? She does this. Oh, and that was it, yeah.